Howdy y'all, and welcome to the special December outlook. Just a disclaimer here before we get started that we cannot predict the future, so please take this forecast with a grain of salt, as anything over a week out is virtually impossible to forecast. Now, before we get started, we're going to take a look at what influences our weather here in December. Then I'll take a look at the long-range models, basically the monthly and weekly long-range forecast models. And then I'll show you what the experts are expecting. And then I'll give you my bold prediction of what we could expect for the month of December. Now, I'm not going to bore you out with the details. I'm just going to sum this all up for you. But basically, we're going to be in a weak La Nina for the month of December, but we are at a 51% of this lasting all the way through winter, which is going to be fading by the time we hit January. As you can see down below here, we're going to be remaining in La Nina all the way through winter, and then by the time we head into early spring, and especially into summertime, we're going to be in that El Nino pattern, and it's looking like we could have a strong El Nino by the time we head into late summer and into fall. But of course, this is subject to change, so keep this in mind. Now, the other factors influencing our weather here in December includes what's called the NJO. I have been seeing on social media that we are going to be in phase 7 leading into phase 8, which means that phase 8 is actually the highest it can go, which means that we are going to be dealing with potentially very, very chilly air and a lot of snowfall. This definitely influences that. And basically, it's a tropical wave that stirs weather every few weeks. Being in phase 7 could start with a cool and wet west, and then cold and snowy outbreaks out east and even in the Midwest. Now, the QBO, y'all have already heard about this one, but for those who haven't, basically it's sudden stratospheric winds that play a role in a polar vortex, breaks it down, and brings out cold air down here in the lower 48. And if you don't know what the polar vortex is, basically it's that negative 10 to 20 degree weather that typically come in on every winter, it seems like. But we're currently in an easterly phase with westerlies descending, so we could be coming in on a polar vortex potentially here for the month of December. Now, the NAO, AO, and PNA typically all act together. So basically with a La Nina and a cold phase, basically means a cooler and wetter north and a milder and drier south with a lot of mountain snow, which is right in alignment with a typical La Nina pattern. And I'll show y'all here in a little bit how the NAO, AO, and PNA all act together to play a role in our December weather. Now on to the weather models here. We are going to be taking a look at all of these long range forecast models. I wish I could put 3 of these together to show you the differences, but we're going to be taking a look at the GEFS extended, Euro weeklies, CSV2 extended, and CMC extended to take a look at week by week of what we could expect as far as above or below average temperatures and precipitation. And then we'll take a look at the monthly guide. The Euro seasonal, CSV2, and CanSIP seasonal all show us what to expect overall for the month of December. And then I'll get into what the experts are showing us and issue my bold prediction of what we could expect. Now first, let's go ahead and get into the temperatures, and then we'll get into the precipitation here in a little bit. But we can see as we head into the beginning weeks of December, pretty spot on with what I've been seeing on a lot of the weather models here as of late, with below normal temperatures here in the central and eastern half of the country, while the southwestern half and some of the western part of the country is going to be coming in on above normal temperatures. Now, what about the middle of the month? Looking to change by a little bit, but not too much here out east. Still going to be remaining below normal, while the western and even central part of the country is going to be coming in on above normal temperatures. Now, what about the end of the month? Well, looking like much of the same story. The northwest is going to be coming in on below normal temperatures, but still remaining below normal here out east, but coming in on above normal temperatures here in the central part of the country. What does the Euro weeklies have to show us? Well, they're showing us that really the same thing that the GEFS was showing us, except the only difference is the southwest is sort of a mixed bag between below normal and above normal. And we can see as we push off into the middle of the month, it's looking like the eastern part of the country is going to remain in a below normal temperature pattern, while the western part of the country, sort of a mixed bag here in the southwest, but the northwest is going to be above average. And of course, here at the end of the month, looking like much of the country is going to be heading into a below normal temperature pattern, which this is the only stark contrast between this in the GEFS. Now, what does the CSV2 have to show us? Well, really the same thing, really. This is in agreement with what the Euro Weeklies was showing us, which is below normal temperatures from the southwest into the northeast with a mixed bag here in the northwest. Now, as we head into the middle of the month, it's looking like this is in agreement with both of the models, with the eastern part of the country heading into a below normal temperature pattern here leading up into the middle of the month, with the central part of the country coming in on a slight above normal warm up, with the southwest being in a mixed bag but leaning below average according to the CSV2. And of course, as we head into Christmas time, right around the end of the month, this is the only difference between these Euro Weeklies in the GEFS, with the CSV2 showing us that the eastern part of the country is heading to an above average pattern, as well as here in the central part of the country. But the only difference is the northeast and western part of the country is coming in on below normal temperatures with a sort of a mixed bag here in the Rocky. Now, as we take a look at the CMC model, we can see that this is the only difference between the rest of the weekly models. We can see that much of the country is heading into a below average pattern, which is kind of spot on with what the rest of them are showing us. At least here out east, it's been pretty consistent as far as below normal temperatures go anyway, but we can see the western part of the country is going to be a mixed bag for the beginning of December. But as we head into the middle of the month, right around the 15th to 16th time frame, it's looking like the central part of the country down here into the south central is going to be above average, mixed bag out west still. Eastern part of the country is going to be remaining below average. Now, this has been pretty consistent with the weekly models so far, at least the below average temperatures leading into the middle of the month anyway. And as we head into the end of the month, right around Christmas time and into the new year, looking to be much of the same story. So basically, it's looking like, according to all the models, it's showing us that the eastern part of the country is going to be below average leading up into the middle of the month. But one of the models was showing us that we could have a slight above average warm up here out east, which could happen. But I think overall, much of the country is going to be feeling below normal temperatures for the month of December. So what does the monthly models have to show us? Well, typically the Euro seasonal model typically has a warmer bias compared to the rest of the models. And we can see that here, that much of the country is heading into an above average temperature trend with sort of near normal temperatures here up north. Now, of course, I'm not in agreement with this, as the weekly models have been showing the eastern part of the country and northeast and southeast being below average, while the western half of the country is sort of a mixed bag, with the central part of the country coming in on above normal temperatures. That's my thoughts anyway, but we'll still take a look at the experts' guidance here in a little bit. Now, what does the CSV2 have to show us? Well, now I'm in agreement with this one. Now, I think they're getting their data based on what a typical weak La Nina pattern shows us, which is basically a colder than normal north and a warmer than normal south, which is shown right here. And I would be in agreement with this one. And what about the CanSIP seasonal? Well, they're showing us pretty much the same thing as well. A colder than normal north and a warmer than normal south. So now that we know what kind of temperatures we're going to be coming in on, let's go ahead and take a look at what the experts are showing us. Well, the experts are showing us that for the entire month of December, they're showing us that the northern half of the country is going to be below average, while the southern half of the country is going to be above average. Now, equal chances means either above or below normal. It just depends, but I would agree with this. I think the beginning of the month is going to be colder than normal out east, sort of a mixed bag out west. But overall, on average, I think it's going to be below normal up north and warmer than normal down south. So now that we know the temperature outlook for the month of December, I'm still going to issue a bold prediction here in a little bit. But what about precipitation? And what about snowfall? Now, please definitely take this with a grain of salt. Can and will change between now and the end of the month. I typically don't like to show snowfall runs over a week out. I typically like to only show the National Blended Models a National Weather Service model, just because I don't like clickbait too much and I just don't like to misinform y'all as well. So as far as precipitation goes, according to the GEFS, as we head into the beginning of December, it's looking like the West Coast is going to be below average, while the Midwest, parts of the Northeast, and especially the deep south into the south central part of the country is going to be above average. And we can see a little bit of the mid-south heading into a below average pattern. Now, what about the middle of the month? We can see that really not much change, really. We're heading to a little bit of a drying pattern here in the deep south, sort of a mixed bag up here in the northeast. Now, the more whites, the more uncertainty there is, of course, but we can see the only difference is out west is that there's a little bit more above average out here, especially up in the northwest, but still remaining below average down here by California. Now, what about the end of the month? We can see that we're going to be remaining below average by California, but the Northwest is going to be above average, and it's looking like the Midwest is going to be above above average as well as up here in the Northeast. But of course, the more whites, the more uncertainty there is, and there has been a lot of whites on this model run. Now, what about the snow totals leading up into the end of the month? Now, please take this with a grain of salt. This is definitely going to change between now and the end of the month, but according to the GEFS, based on the latest model runs, week by week, we can see that looking like the Midwest, Great Lakes, Northeast, and West Coast is going to be coming in on a lot of snowfall. But of course, this will change between now and then. So please, again, take this with a grain of salt, as the GEFS was showing us below normal precipitation here in the West Coast. But again, this is what the GEFS is showing us according to how much snowfall could occur. Now, what about the Euro weeklies? Well, they're showing us the exact same thing that the GEFS was showing us, with a way below average West Coast and a way above average Deep South, and sort of above average Midwest and Northeast and Southeast, with some above average precipitation up here by Montana, and it's still going to be dry up here in the Northwest. Now, what about the middle of the month, right around the 14th to 15th time frame? Well, just like the GEFS, there's more whites on the map, which means more uncertainty. So they're showing us the same exact thing that the GEFS was showing us, which is below average precipitation here about by California, above average precipitation in the Northwest, a little bit more above average here up by Montana and Idaho, above average here in the Southeast, and drying out here in the Mid-South. And what about the end of the month, right around the Christmas time, New Year's time frame? Well, they're showing us that really more uncertainty, but looking like the West Coast is going to be heading into a slight above average pattern. So a little bit more uncertainty with the Euro weeklies. But moving on, we'll take a look at the snow totals of what they're expecting. And they're expecting that a little less snowfall than the GEFS, which I would be in agreement with, but I think we are going to be coming in on a lot of snowfall here in the Midwest for the month of December. But of course, this is subject to change. Keep this in mind. This is a long-range forecast model. Can and will change. Now onto my favorite model, which is the CSV2. We could see clearly the above and below average precipitation. That's why I like this one more than the other models. But we can see as we head into the beginning of December, the West Coast is going to be below average, while the Mid-South up into the Midwest, into the Northeast is going to be below average as well. Southeast is above average, as well as up here in the Northern Plains and parts of the Northwest. Now, what about the middle of the month? Well, we head into right around the 14th to 15th time frame. Looks like a little bit more above average precipitation here in the West Coast, into the Rockies, into the Northern Plains and Great Lakes region. Sort of drying out here out by Texas, but overall looks like near normal to above average precipitation for much of the country. As they head into the end of the month, it's looking like, wow, it's looking like the rest of the country is going to be heading into, and really the entire country is heading into above average precipitation, unless you live up here in the Northwest, which I would be in agreement with this, actually. Now, this model really doesn't show the snow totals too much, really. It's really too confusing to show y'all, but for kicks and giggles, let's go ahead and take a look at it. You can see a lot less snowfall than what the GEFS and Euro Weeklies was showing us, but of course, take this with a grain of salt. Now, what about the CMC extended model? Well, pretty spot on with what the rest of the models were showing us, which is below average precipitation here on the West Coast, above average here in the Southeast and Deep South, above average here in the Midwest. The only difference is here in Kentucky and Tennessee, going to be below average. Above average here up by Montana. Now, what about the middle of the month? Well, right around the 17th time frame, it's looking like the West Coast is going to be above average. This is the only difference between this and the rest of the models, as well as over here in the Mid-South and Midwest could be below average out here according to the CMC. And this is really the only difference between this and the rest of the models. Now, what about the end of the month? I'm not in agreement with this model, but at least according to this model, it's showing us the eastern part of the country is going to be above average, as well as the western part of the country. But again, I don't like this model. I just don't. Not very clear, at least visually, so disregard it. I don't like it. So what about the snowfall rates? Well, they're showing us a lot less than what the previous two I was showing y'all, which I would actually be in agreement with this. This is probably the only thing I would agree with when it comes to the CMC model. So again, take any snowfall run over a week out with a grain of salt, as really snowfall is really too hard to predict. Just like last night, we got snowfall here at the Williams Weather headquarters, and it melted as fast as it came down. So we actually got in right around 2 inches of snowfall when it did fall. So snowfall is hard to predict, so please take this with a grain of salt. Now, moving on to the monthly models here, we can see the Euro seasonal is showing us that the Northwest on average is going to be above average, as well as here in the Midwest and Northeast, but it's looking like the South Central and parts of the Deep South could be below average. Now, what about the CSV2 model? Well, I would be in agreement with this one as well. So we can see the West Coast is going to be below average for the entire month of December, it's looking like, but it's looking like the Rockies all the way up here into the Midwest and Southeast, and really much of the country is going to be heading into an above average precipitation pattern. So I would be definitely in agreement with this one. As y'all can tell, the CSV2 is my favorite model. Now, the Concept model is the only one that differs between the Euro and CSV2. As you can see, the Northwest and Midwest, Plains, and Northeast is going to be below average. The only spots that are going to be above average is the Southeast. So I definitely would be in disagreement with this. So I would be in agreement with the CSV2 model as far as precipitation and the temperatures, as we could be dealing with a wet and cool north and sort of a drier and warmer than normal south, but some areas could still be warm and wet, which could mean icing as well. So what do the experts have to say? Well, they're showing us that the Northwest, Great Lakes, Midwest, and Northeast is going to be dealing with above average precipitation, while the Southeast and parts of the Southwest are going to be dealing with below average precipitation. Now, I would agree with this. I think they're getting their data for what a typical weak La Nina pattern shows us, which is a cool and wet north and a dry and warm south. So it means we could have a lot of snowfall occurring here in the Midwest, which includes the Williams Weather Headquarters. Could be good for the content this year. I think we're going to be coming in on a lot of snowfall this year. Just my own opinion, because we are already coming in on significant snowfall, which is typical for a La Nina pattern. So basically, according to the Climate Prediction Center, we're going to be dealing with a very soggy northern part of the country and a dry southern half of the country, while the northern part of the country is going to be cool and the southern part of the country is going to be a little bit warmer than normal. So we could be dealing with a lot of snowfall up north and a little bit less precipitation down south, which could mean some icing as well. Now, my thoughts are basically in alignment with what the CSV2 is showing us, which is pretty in alignment with what the Climate Prediction Center was showing us. And also, the precipitation is the only thing that differs from the Climate Prediction Center according to the CSV2, as it's looking like much of the country is going to be heading into above average precipitation, which I would actually be in agreement with this. I'm kind of mixed between this and the Climate Prediction Center, as they're showing us that the southern part of the country, at least in the Southeast and Southwest, is going to be drier than normal. So now that I beat the dead horse on what we could expect for the month of December, which is basically, I think the beginning of the month is going to be really, really cold for much of us here in the central and eastern part of the country. And I think the middle of the month is going to start to warm up a little bit. But then as we head into Christmas time, I think we are going to be dealing with some drastically cold air again, and I think we're going to be remaining in that pattern with a lot of snowfall occurring as well. Now on to my bold prediction. I'm thinking that a major Arctic blast from a polar vortex split will hit mid-December, plunging over 200 million Americans into sub-zero temps and dumping heavy snow across the Midwest, Northeast, and even the South, potentially the coldest start to winter in over a decade. This bold call stems from the combination of a weak La Nina steering storms north and easterly QBO, which weakens down the vortex, and a negative NAO, AO, and MJO phases, which unleashes colder outbreaks. So expect above normal precipitation in the north, which means a good skiing season, but a drier south, it being milder to start, then brutally cold air after December 13th. Now, as far as what this year will resemble, as far as previous Decembers. Now keep in mind, the future is unnovel. Cannot predict the future. The future does not act like the past in most cases. It typically rhymes, but based on the current setup of a weak La Nina, an easterly QBO, and even tendencies toward a negative NAO, AO, and PNA, this December could resemble the year 2000, a notably cold month with national average temperatures near 4.4 degrees below normal. Bitter chills in the Midwest, sub-zero highs in places like Minnesota, cooler than average conditions extending to the Southeast and Mid-Atlantic, drier east overall, and significant winter storms, including a major nor'easter dumping snow in the Northeast. This analog fits due to similar weak La Nina and easterly QBO phases, driving polar air southward. Other close matches include 2013, which was 2 degrees below average nationally with ice storms and record snow in the spot, or even December in 2010, which was mixed with Arctic outbreaks and southeast snow. So we could have a December like 2000, 2013, and 2010, which were all very snowy and very, very chilly Decembers. Now, not all Decembers have been very chilly. I remember, I think it was a couple years ago, it was very warm. I think it was 2021, 2023, somewhere around there. One of those 2 months was very, very warmer than normal. But this December, I think it's going to be very snowy and very, very cold. Now on to some interesting stats and facts and even some folklore about this upcoming December. If the October moon has a ring, the winter will be a stinger. In many parts of the United States, especially Appalachia and the Midwest, farmers say a bright ring around the October full moon means heavy frost is already locked in the ground, and winter will hit hard and early. This October's hunter's moon did have a visible halo on the 17th due to high cirrus. So I think December is going to be one to remember, that's for sure. And on to an interesting fun fact about December. Did you know the coldest temperature ever recorded on Christmas Day was negative 52 degrees in 1983 at Tower, Minnesota. Colder than the North Pole that day. So I hope y'all enjoyed this December outlook, and hopefully y'all got a lot out of it. If you did, please hit that like and share button so more folks are informed about the weather. And also, don't forget to leave me some feedback in the comment section down below, as feedback helps provide you, the viewer, better and more informative content in the future. Also, don't forget to hit that subscribe button if you haven't done so already, because at Here Always Weather we try to make weather forecasting fun and informative. So basically, I'm expecting it to be really, really cold here for the month of December here out east, with a potential polar vortex and a lot of snowfall occurring. Now for the western part of the country, I think it's going to be a mixed bag just based off what the weather models were showing us. But if we stick with the experts of what they're showing us, they're expecting it to be cool and wet up north and dry and warm down south. Now of course, this is subject to change, so please take this with a grain of salt. And of course, my bold prediction is we're going to be dealing with some cold outbreaks as we head into the December 13th time frame, which could mean a lot of snowfall. So brace for December to remember. This can will change, of course, keep that in mind. But of course, stay safe, stay warm, and prepare for the holiday season. Get all jolly, y'all, because that fat man's gonna squeeze his butt down that chimney. So again, like, comment, subscribe. Appreciate all y'all for watching. Enjoy the holiday season, and until next time, never stop forecasting.